Morning. This House is now in session. Prior to the suspension on Tuesday, 19th day of February 2019, this Honorable Chamber had resolved itself into the Standing Finance Committee to debate the Appropriation Bill and Estimates 2019. We thus revert to the side.
We are now in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for St. John.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Honourable Minister, my question is related to sub-program 0555. This is in relation to an area that I have in St. John called Pool Woods. And I'm wondering if this is a constant and as it relates to your particular ministry, because for more than 15 years, I know that persons from the other side, not the honorable member, the honorable opposition leader, was trying to have this particular area clean. And I'm seeing under this sub-program that it relates to the development and implementation of national parks. And I am wondering what exactly would I need to do as it relates to getting assistance from your ministry in moving this wooded area into a national park. Because in truth, I can see where this can be used for recreational purposes, it can be used for commerce, and it can also embrace culture. So I'm just trying to find out exactly what is required to trigger assistance from your ministry in having this particular area move from just a wooded area into a national park.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Minister, for the question. I believe that you are a couple of seconds behind the decisions that we have already made. We are going to beautify a number of areas across Barbados. I'm assuming that that is where there's a lot of mahogany trees just before you get up to Gold Hill. I will give you the assurance that no later than next week, the groundwork for the cleanup program would be applied, and I will make sure that priority is given to that specific area. I know the area well. The mahogany tree is very important to the people of Barbados. I know that you represent a constituency that little has been done, despite that constituency had 2 prime ministers representing it, and I give you the assurance that you're going to have the full support of the ministry, and by next week, the National Conservation Commission will be moving in there to uplift the quality of the area itself.
Madam Chair, I have another question that's not related, and I know the question should be attached, so I will come back to my other question.
Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Madam Chair, Honourable Member, you and I worked very closely to bring a ban on plastics, single-use plastics. But the one thing I keep hearing from Barbadians is that it doesn't make sense to ban the plastics without a policy for garbage separation. And so I'm wondering, I couldn't obviously pick it up in the estimates, but I'm wondering what are the plans for the further separation of garbage so as to bring not only full manifestation of the plastic ban to fruition, but just to be able to separate garbage. Is that a policy position of the ministry, and what are the plans for that going forward?
Madam Chair, well, I can just give short input on this matter. I would like to answer the officer with a technical background, but from an administrative perspective, we have already put all plans in place to bring the required legislation for the banning of plastic. We are banning plastic bags of a specific type. We're styrofoam cups. The reality is that we know that the plastic is harmful not only on land but also in the ocean. It destroys lots of the species, the fish, and also the corals as well. And it's not a case of this government going here and there on any specific issue. The decision has already been made that is going to be a reality, that that type of plastic will be banned. So if any other technical information which the honourable member might need, I have the appropriate individual here, Mr. Marshall, who can really respond to that.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to that issue, we have been working quite assiduously with respect to the diversion of waste from the landfill. When you look at our waste characterization studies, which we do every 10 years or so, it would demonstrate that we have been able to divert about 70% of the waste away from landfilling to date through the activities in association with SBRC, as well as with a number of private recyclers. What we are seeking to do is to take the program even further and to look at separation at source. This, of course, calls for us first getting past the issues associated with the availability of trucks just to allow us to collect the waste that we need to collect. And then the step after that would be to look at putting in place trucks that have separate compartments for the collection of recyclables so that we can expand what is being removed from the waste stream now. In addition to that, we've continued our education program, which we plan to expand to identify for persons the opportunities and the positive outcomes of seeing waste as a resource and being more of a steward for the environment, because we know that there's an issue of what they call the NIMBY syndrome, which is not in my backyard, but once you have a country as small as Barbados, you're in somebody's backyard or front yard, wherever you are. And so we're trying to ensure that we can bring that separation and expand the recycling.
Thank you. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, ma'am, and good morning. Good morning, Minister and team. Quick question. Minister, can you speak to, or whomsoever you may want to delegate, of course, in your team, can you speak to the arrangements with and the obligations of the government to SBRC? The indebtedness levels, the challenges which the government might be facing with respect to keeping its commitments under those arrangements, and while you are at it, can you speak relative to Cahill?
First of all, I believe that I owe some clarity to these matters as your parliamentary representative as well. Not only you are the person who contributed, right? And I'm glad for that endorsement. There are lots of details that time would not permit me to go into them. But what I can tell you is that the government at present is renegotiating the arrangements in the contract. The outcome of those arrangements will be made known at the appropriate time. But what the reduction in the cost that we now pay to SBRC will be reduced to more than 50% of what was arranged before, and I believe that is a great achievement. In other words, we would be going below, I think we are, yes, it was 2 million, we were paying 2 million? We were paying $2 million. We were paying $2 million annually to SBRC. Monthly to SBRC. So you know what sort of money we're talking about. And according to what I describe as preliminary information returning to this minister, because I'm not directly making the arrangements or negotiating. I'm normally given the information of where we are. I believe that we should find ourselves way below $1 million a month. So I consider that, I don't even know if I should call it as a humanitarian contribution. If I look at it from the other side, it was more than unreasonable really for us to be paying $2 million a month for that service. But obviously, if you drop down to below $1 million, you will understand what I'm talking about in relation to what other persons were prepared to pay in the circumstances against what we are paying now, with no conditions changing whatsoever. Thank you.
Any follow-up?
Yes, ma'am. I did hear reference to Cahill, and beyond what the minister said, and I thank him for that. What is the level of indebtedness? You're talking to me about the financial arrangements from the outset, which you're working to get reduced by at least 50%. But what is the level of indebtedness now to SBRC, if any, and other private waste haulers in Barbados, plus the Cahill thing, and I'm done.
Let me ask the manager of the SSA at least to respond to that.
Good morning. With respect to the indebtedness...
Could you introduce yourself, ma'am?
Sorry, I'm Janice Jones, Manager Sanitation. With respect to the indebtedness to SBRC, prior to the debt restructuring, we were indebted to them over $20-something million, and that is now being handled by the Ministry of Finance. With the matter of Cahill, that matter is now sub judice because that is being dealt with by the Attorney General's chambers.
Thank you, ma'am. Honourable member for St. James North.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to all. Honourable Minister, I commend you and your department for the efforts you've made and have been and continue to make in terms of environmental cleanup in Barbados and national beautification. I know we all know is a hard task because the legacy which you were left with from the former government was not great at all. Very little equipment, trucks, bobcats, etc., which are a prerequisite for any cleanup of the country. But we have to try our best as we can. And I was just wondering what strategies your ministry has in terms of involving private sector volunteerism in the effort of cleaning up Barbados, because we're all in this together, we're all affected by it. I know that last year, well, your ministry, my ministry, and others were involved in cleaning up in July, and we started in the WIM in my constituency, a major area, and because of that effort, in fact, when Storm Kirk passed, Gales Terrace and other areas in Spikestown, which are normally affected by heavy rainfall storms, escaped on this occasion. So I was just wondering what strategies, arrangements does your ministry have in place to involve private sector cooperation and assistance on a voluntary basis in cleanup campaign, beautification of Barbados, and helping make Barbados as aesthetically beautiful as we know we can be.
Thanks, Mr. Minister. As you're aware, work was done last year, as you indicated in the WIM. The effort in the WIM was not only the input of the government agencies, mainly MTW, NCC, but there was also private sector participation and community volunteer participation as well. That is not a model that will be alien in relation to the functioning of this ministry. Wherever we can engage the community in participating in these efforts, we will do so. But obviously, it's going to be a gradual approach, and sometimes we have to use persuasion, and sometimes volunteerism is not consistent. We also went to Bonnets in the year, last year as well. We did a massive cleanup program in Bonnets. We move all types of waste. Waste sometimes that it is almost unbelievable that you have that kind of material. And we move everything that was there. That was a massive program. I think we moved 40-something, over 40 vehicles from the Bonnets. The volunteerism was very much involved there, but because of the state, the nastiness that we were, I don't want to say bequeath, but because the institution that passed it on to us, I would hope that the society has already judged them. So the chances are that these things have been bequeathed to us, and we have to find a way of resolving them. We are also involved in the community and the private sector in the work with the seaweeds across the borders, around the borders of Barbados, and that we have the Ministry of the Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy also working in collaboration with us, the Ministry of Tourism. We also have a lot of companies. The fire that we had recently on the landfill, I would take this opportunity to thank Jose for responding outside of the state units. Jose respond favorable. We also had C.O. Williams who respond. We could not put down that fire on the landfill within record time if we did not have the collective contributions of the private sector, volunteerism, and the state working in collaboration with each other.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Madam Chair, good morning to honourable members of Parliament and professional members of staff of the Sanitation Board and others. I want, ma'am, to focus on what I saw in the minutes of the Sanitation Board just a few months ago that have me astounded. When I learned that the rolling stock in 2017 would have been 12 to 15 trucks, 1 skip truck, and 1 skip compactor. And I would want to know, ma'am, why an institution that has to look after the entire Barbados would not have been more proactive at that time in making sure that the public and the visitors among us are safe. And the point I want to make is that I believe that the Honourable Minister and his team at the Sanitation Services Authority should be praised for the efforts in that short space of time to be able to have 2 trucks on the island to help to ease the problem of garbage collection. And of course, the Minister had assured us that 5 should be coming soon. And I believe that the board and the management need to be highly commended for that. I want to know why the lethargy at that time, and how could we have a board in 2017, August and September, no meeting. And then in October the 2nd, 2017, no meeting again because there was no quorum. And then a November meeting when this country was breaking at the seams with large volumes of garbage and all kinds of play parks and other beaches and so that needed to be cleaned. And therefore I want to know what plans this new board and this institution has under the leadership of the Honourable Member for St. Michael East to be able to mitigate some of these challenges. We do not ever want our Barbados to be in that condition again. And the other question is, in Central Barbados, we meet tremendous challenges every day. Sometimes our refuse is not collected 4 to 5 weeks, and little calls have to be made to senior persons to have something done. And we understand the circumstances under which the institution is progressing. Or surviving, when we have so many thousands of households and the numbers are growing daily, as well as our visitors among us and the businesses. I want to know what plans are being put in place so when these other 5 trucks come, that there could be a better collection in the parish of St. Thomas. We are the dumping ground, the old cars, the garbage in every alley, every gully, every water course, even on people's private property. And I want to know, going forward, how the institution is going to work with us. And the final question is, what proper plans are being put in place? I pass and I see a particular institution where trucks are parked for many, many months. Sanitation trucks, some transport board buses too. And I want to know, what is the challenge with the maintenance? Is it to do with funding that is not being paid? Is it to do with parts, as I have seen in these minutes, that were ordered for the engines and the wrong engines were delivered? I want to know what plans there are, because every truck that is off the road is going to put more pressure on the members of staff, particularly the drivers and those who are collecting, to be able to be as efficient as possible. I want to know what plans there are going forward for training for that staff as well, because they too must be commended for the excellent work they're doing to keep Barbados clean from the large percentage of rodents we're now seeing, and for the illnesses that are reported at the hospital as a result of what diseases are circulating in our communities as a result of the challenges that the SSA has. And so I close by saying, congratulations to the staff and the minister and the board thus far for what they are doing, and never ever let us again cause the taxpayers' monies to be expended in the way they were, because accountability is critical, responsibility and equity across Barbados. And I shall not be letting off this board or the minister or anybody, because at the end of the day, we're all Barbadians, and when we pay these large taxes, especially what is now being added to the water bill, and so we expect proper services and proper accountability in every sphere of life, and we understand and we will tolerate when there are challenges, but these have been going on for too long. And I wish to thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Thomas and Minister. You expressed probably clearly probably some of the answers, some of the challenges that we face, and probably have done so, and you will do so continuously better than I. But the reality is that what you stated is correct. We inherited these problems, and that's why in my introduction on the last occasion when I was here, that I spoke on lack of the inclusion of fertile minds into decision making, and where one man at this spot felt that he had the right to do everything on his own and never manage the institution in a proper way. When I first made check at the SSA, we were working already with the private haulers, because we had a limited number of trucks, and we were certainly down to an average about 12 trucks on the road, and facing challenges with these trucks. Some of the trucks, as I indicated before, are over 16 years old. Madam Chair, if you know the estimated life of a truck, even a private vehicle, you will know it would exceed far less than 16 years. We have trucks there that are already, the manufacturers of the trucks do not exist on planet Earth. And these difficulties in finding parts for the trucks. There's also, we were short of a tractor, a D9, and then we had to spend a substantial sum of Barbadian dollars on engaging a private person to have a D9 truck to serve as a compactor on the landfill in St. Thomas. We now can assure you that the D9 tractor is here in Barbados. It came in last week, and the SSA is working swiftly in collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and the Port to have that D9 tractor out. We already received 2 small SSA trucks. Within the next few hours and days, you will see an additional 5 trucks here. And we already have, after we went through all the pre-arrangements, including the tenders for additional trucks, we already have on order 15 more trucks. So, well, the tender process is completed, and we know exactly who those persons would be that we would having business with. And you can rest assured that immediately after the completion of these estimates, the process will continue. Now, overall, we have some challenges at the sanitation department. And time would not permit me, but one of the biggest challenges that we have is the construction of a building at Vaucluse, which is 5 stories. And hopefully, as long as time permits, I will probably tell you all where we are with that particular building.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to all. Good morning to Minister and his team. First, let me begin by congratulating you for the work that you've been doing in the very trying circumstances. And we all know that this team, Barbados, is very dependent on this team, both in terms of garbage collection and preservation of our environment. I want to anchor my question in the head subprogram 0386, the National Conservation Commission. This body has done, I must say, a lot of good work across Barbados in cleaning up the beaches, parks, and so on. They have provided parks in many communities across Barbados for the recreation of the residents therein. I want to draw attention, as a matter of fact, I want to ask my first question in terms of what informs the decisions in relation to the establishment of parks in the various communities.
I'll let Mr. Nebula answer that, but I also want to assure Minister Phillips that we carried out a program recently that complement some work that he did also in the Constitutional River, and we moved over 40 bags of plastic which was left behind, and I believe that you also like to know about that, but Mr. Nebula will continue to speak.
Keith Neblett, General Manager of the NCC. The rationale for the establishment of parks, one is that it has to be Crown lands. And if it's not Crown lands, certainly there have been areas where, in terms of some developments, where we have to get the authorization from the owners of the property. To know most developments, there's an area that has been allocated for recreational space, but we have to get the permission from that. But the other area that we have always sought to have the play parks in areas that are pretty close to communities. Years ago, we established quite a few that were close to day nurseries. But the rationale basically has to be Crown lands. And we have always sought to look at areas that are densely populated and areas that really we need to have that type of resource for young children to really go and really exercise and work in a healthy environment.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
sorry.
Can I just add to it? We have also been working with the Marine Holder Trust. And I think that so far we've been about 11 parks. The last one, that was in St. Thomas. The last one that we did was in St. Thomas, and the Maria Holder Trust has already committed itself to building, I think, about 11 more parks for us. And we want to express our gratitude to them too for that kind of philanthropic approach, and at least help us to provide more recreational and sacred space for our people in the community.
Thank you.
My follow-up question is, having established these parks, what is the maintenance program of the agency? And I speak I ask this question because in Checker Hall, we would have had a park established. There was one in Coconut Hall. St. Lucie probably only has about 3, but particularly Checker Hall and Coconut Hall, these parks were left to actually, what you say, run to ruin. I know some work began on the Coconut Hall Park just sometime last year to restore it. It is not yet being fully restored, and the Checker Hall Park needs some maintenance. And what overall, not just if we focus on St. Lucie, but overall, because if you establish parks, then there must be a maintenance program in place. So what is the maintenance program?
Minister, we are going to work with you and other ministers right across Barbados to address some of these problems. We could not do all of this. We have 71 parks that we look after. We look after all the kiosks on the various beaches from Oysters, where we build the kiosks down there. We have to be putting benches and taking care of almost, as you would know too, that since you had a little shortage in your, or rather, since a little part of your staff was truncated in recent times, we had to take up some of the responsibilities that you were working on. But with 71 parks to service and maintain, you know, that is a major challenge with all the other things that we do. But we're now introducing a new program which will help me to treat some of those issues. When I was here last week, Monday, it was Tuesday, I indicated to this honorable house and the public of Barbados and the world at large that this ministry and the NCC will be undertaking a national program in every pocket across Barbados. Obviously, we can't encroach on private property, but all the parks also will be maintained properly as a consequence of that program. You might even call it a crash program, but we recognize that across the country it is very untidy, and we are trying to see if we can uplift the quality of the surroundings across Barbados, and the NCC has been given that task to perform, and that program will be launched on Monday as well.
Thank you.
I have another question not related.
Well, we'll get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good morning, Minister and your team. Good morning. Thank you. I know that you're responsible for the environment, and I want to address the matter of the environment generally, and just to point to certain areas in the constituency which you may or may not know about. And you can be assured that I have not come to bury you, perhaps I've come to praise you. I represent a constituency that is quite self-sufficient, and this would please you. There are several civic-minded and conscientious people there who have gone about the task of cleaning and beautifying the constituency. And I want your permission to name a few of those areas and perhaps to name a few persons, because I don't believe they should.
I remember you want my permission.
Your permission, yes. Yes, I was looking at him, but I'm really seeking your permission. And I should look at you since you're better looking than he is.
There you go.
So having had your permission, ma'am, let me say to the minister and his team, the Graham Hall Recycling Project, that is a private recycling scheme that is done by the residents of Graham Hall. A private hauler comes in on Saturdays or a specific day, and they sort the garbage, I suppose you call it, the recyclables, and take them away. Quickly, I'll tell you, the Atlantic Shores Recycling Project, and I want to say, Madam Chair, that the persons who spearheaded that project would have been Mrs. Shari Lobo and Mr. Barney Gibbs. And these are people who deserve to have their names known publicly. The Ashby Land cleanup, we've done that twice. Mr. Kirk Baines has been in charge of that project. The fisher folk have been cleaning up the beach of Sargassum behind the Oystins Market. Again, that was done by the ladies who work in the market and Mr. Kirk Baines, who is also a fisherman. On Sunday morning, the fisher folk will again be cleaning up the, I know this comes under the Ministry of Fisheries, but they're going to be cleaning the market, and the market is right adjacent to the property for which the NCC is responsible, that is the Bay Garden. The boat owners just this week, in association with the Ministry of Fisheries, they cleaned the entire boat yard. And these are people who deserve to be acknowledged because their work is supplementing the work of your ministry, and I think you should know this. I come to the Bay Garden, which falls directly under your ministry, Minister. And the need to keep that zone clean is critical. They're hosting hundreds, thousands of people every week. And with the entry of the new university, Ross University, into Barbados, they're hosting several more people than they used to before. We are at the height of the tour season. The cricket is playing now, and a lot of tourists are here. And the cleaning of that Bay Garden is very, very critical. And I'm asking your ministry to pay some more attention to that Bay Garden, particularly during the tour season. As I said, it is a very self-sufficient constituency. So that while these public spaces are being cleaned by the persons who work there, there are private areas like Fair Home Gardens where some of the residents, it's an older population, and they cannot, for one reason or another, commit themselves to that level of self-sufficiency. Your problem, Minister, is that a lot of the lots are private and the people are overseas perhaps, and I know there's the logistical problem of venturing onto a person's private property to clean.
You have a minute left?
In wrapping up, I will tell you that we would still like to urge your ministry to give some consideration and to reach some compromise in relation to the cleaning of private lots that really constitute a nuisance in the community. And lastly, Madam Chair, recycling, I want your ministry to promote the idea of recycling in the schools. I don't think your ministry's work will be complete unless our children are educated as to recycling. Recycling will solve a large percentage of the problem of garbage and refuse collection in Barbados. If you wish to, can I have your response on that, please?
Yeah. Thank you. We are cognizant of the challenges that you have at what was there, Oystins, for sure, and we are trying to access about $300,000 to start to do some repairs around there. Drainage. We know that there's some problems with the drainage system there, and water settles behind the stalls as well. We are fully aware that you had some problems with some repairs to the toilet facilities, and we intend to do all that we can to upgrade the quality of the stalls. I personally believe that we can even make some of them a lot more attractive than they are at present. So I'll be walking with you shortly in going into the Oystins area and any of the other areas that, and we can do that as early as possible. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking about making that journey on Sunday, and if you are available, and I know that you will be, I will be coming there with the NCC staff, including Mr. Neblett, at 10 o'clock?
Yes, please.
Right. We have made that agreement on the floor of this House, and I will stay with the commitments. We are also very much appreciative, because we just could not do it alone, of the kind of community spirit which you which you cultivated over the last few months that you became the parliamentary representative of the area. I want to thank all the people who have been involved in the recycling program, Atlantic Shores, those who have been involved with the Graham Hall project, Hall project recycling program as well.
Yes.
But the ministry, and I believe I should also ask Mr. Headley to speak on this one, because Mr. Headley, he deals a lot with indoor and outdoor water testing to see the quality of water, and he can speak to you on that. He also deals with the air quality in those areas. I just want to say that to you because we are very much involved in a lot of activities on that whole coastal area, and I believe that which would be the last major one that we worked on would have been the South Coast project. We worked in collaboration with the Ministry of Energy, and we were very much involved in the challenges that we face on biodiversity at Graham Hall. And I've been told by the staff, I'm going to make a visit there as well, that we've been able to restore the quality of the ecosystem at Graham Hall. But I will let Mr. Headley speak on this, and if you need additional clarity, you put the question, and I'll bring the other officer who also work with that. I just also want you to know that we do more work than just the removal of waste from different locations. And I think he should also tell you that he'll be moving shortly many derelict cars as well and vehicles from your community.
Thank you, Minister.
Good morning. Anthony Headley, Acting Director, Environmental Protection Department. The Minister is absolutely correct. We work with respect to air quality and water quality, and specifically on the issue of the South Coast. We collected daily samples. Between September and January, we collected 1,862 samples testing the water quality to ensure that it was safe and to allow for certain decisions to be made with respect to the safety and the use of the beach. On the issue of cleaning of private lots, which you mentioned, that is a task which we will have to do in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, because the Ministry of Health has the power of entry in terms of Section 11 of the Health Services Act, and therefore both the NCC and our department will work with the Ministry of Health to ensure that those lots that are overgrown, that they can be addressed through the appropriate channels. Thank you.
Please, 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Minister, and your team. I did raise the question of education, and this exercise will be wasted only on our generation unless we pass it on to children in terms of attitudes and approach to their environment. We have 2 schools in our constituency, 2 primary schools, and there's Foundation, which is a secondary school on the hill. I know these things take money, but I wonder if I can urge your ministry through your various departments to produce literature which would constitute a program of education to encourage good habits in children. I'm talking about St. Christopher and St. Lawrence and Foundation up the hill. If you could visit those schools with literature to encourage children in good environmental habits, and certainly to focus on recycling as something that this country needs to pursue. So I'm asking your ministry to pursue a series of educational projects for our young children. I don't know if I can get your response on that.
We'll ask Mr. Marshall to speak on that, but I can assure you that we have a national education program on the agenda. We started it before, and Mr. Marshall will be one of the pioneers in this exercise.
Thank you, Minister. Ricardo Marshall, the manager of the Project Management Coordination Unit. Ricardo Marshall, the project manager of the Project Management Coordination Unit in the ministry. We have had a schools education and outreach program going for quite a while, and I can assure you that we have been to all 3 of the schools that you have mentioned, St. Christopher, St. Lawrence, and the Foundation School. We do presentations. We have, in terms of giving them information. We've supplied bins to assist with the recycling program. We've also introduced into the schools quite recently the game called Waste Buster, the game that puts waste in its place. We have a number of other brochures and other pamphlets. We've also just recently established the website, www.solid.gov.bb, which speaks about solid waste management and the potential impacts of acts that are not appropriate, as well as the positive outcomes associated with appropriate behaviors. We've also had programs running in the schools, in certain government departments, as well as with some private sector entities, as well as some private communities, relative to programs to collect recyclables and work with private sector recyclers to take that material so that we're not putting it into the landfill. And these programs are in the budget for this year, and we're expecting to continue to work in partnership with the Ministry of Education and our other partners in continuing these sorts of activities.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Just to inform you, the bins at some of our St. Philip schools, St. Mark's, they haven't been cleared for the term week 7, and they're overflowing. So just get on that would be nice. Chair recognizes the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Before I start, let me say that I really want to commend you, ma'am, as chairman of committees, for the excellent way in which you have handled this new proceedings. I am almost tempted to say you were born for it. But I also know that you have wonderfully other capable skills that we may have to call on in the future. Having said that, I want to also thank the Minister of Environment and National Beautification for taking to the road literally in moving across the length and breadth of Barbados to begin the very difficult task of changing the culture of people again, and to resume that culture of responsibility that allows our people and house owners and landowners to understand that the first responsibility for cleanup starts at them, starts at us. When we were children, people cleaned up around their houses. People even cleaned up in the road in front their houses. And the notion that only government must clean up is something that this government strongly rejects. And my cabinet colleagues will tell you that they may call me the chief bushwasher in chief. Bushwasher in chief, because every Thursday morning I come with a list of areas that need to be cleaned up in this country, because it is unacceptably overgrown with bush and strewn with garbage. Having said all of that, the aspect of your ministry's name that I take the greatest pride in is national beautification. And I'd like the minister to perhaps have the chairman of the National Conservation Commission come forward and speak to us about how they intend to work not just on their own, but through working with civil society to expand the flagship project at Waterford, Friendship, Plantation really, but known as the District of Waterford in my constituency, and I speak therefore as MP today, as well as into the constituency of the minister who may be a little too bashful to ask for himself, given that we've agreed that the National Botanical Gardens boundary needs to go across the road and right into the bell, which has been the location only for bush and overgrown river tamarind in recent times. such that when you come down the ABC highway on that section, you will see a level of beautification that will hopefully inspire others across the entire country to do the same. Our concept of a park in Barbados, regrettably, seemed big when we were children at Queen's Park and King George V, but really we have no major national space for ordinary Bajans to be able to reflect on beauty and to recreate, and that is the intention of the more than 250 acres on the Waterford side of the Botanical Gardens, and I don't know how many other hundreds of acres you have on the Bell side where we are going to extend. So I'd like to hear the chairman on what they're doing, what they intend to do to trigger civil society as well, because government alone can't finance this major national project, but we will do so collaboratively. Please.
Ramon Aline, Chairman of the National Conservation Commission. Madam Chair, the Ministry has certainly indicated to the Commission that the National Beautification Project is a priority. I would actually say that the Commission has taken it as its primary focus in terms of the next quarter, 2 quarters, in initiating a 3-phase program. Obviously, it starts with the initial cleanup. The Madam Prime Minister has rightfully indicated that across the country, the level of cleanup necessary is significant. Certainly the Commission gets the indication of those highlighted areas that must be focused upon. It comes down through the Ministry. We've already initiated a program which the Minister has spoken to, which starts this coming week. We've had conversations with small entrepreneurs from the different communities who will be assisting the National Conservation Commission in the initial cleanup effort. We are bringing in basically the full community, private sector, small entrepreneurs, small business persons, and we are making this an effort where everyone has hands on deck. Up to yesterday, I was taking calls from private sector individuals who have indicated a desire to make a commitment to the program, put up their funds in support of what they have seen, a new renewed energy that is evident in terms of how the Commission is carrying out its focus. And we believe that that will be a start of a serious private sector initiative. Over the years, we have lost a lot of sponsorship that used to come from the private sector, and I reasonably consider it would have been through a fall off in trust as to how the Commission was carrying on its activities. And I think the Ministry has certainly indicated, and the Commission has certainly got across the point to the private sector, that we are not going to be able to do this initiative on our own. Their role is essential, but more importantly, the efforts that are being made has certainly raised their enthusiasm to make that commitment to the effort. In relation to that large tract of land, which, as is indicated, abounds 2 constituencies that I obviously have to be very, very interested in. The Commission, although the National Botanical Gardens does not fall within its main mandate, obviously abuts and abounds it, and we work very closely with the administration of the area. We have received the mandate of government that this is a priority, this development is a priority, and we've committed our resources to working together to develop a trust-tight initiative supported by a charity, which will speak to funding that type of program, which obviously is a resource-intensive program. It's 250 acres that has to be developed. Under the auspices of you, Madam Prime Minister, we've had those initial discussions with planners as to how we can approach that type of initiative, what we are going to do with some very impressive natural formations within it. We are thinking of outdoor performances, facilitating also the commercial ventures which government has indicated the Commission must push, because obviously the financing of the Commission is not going to be only through central government. We need to become more self-sufficient, and that will also offer an opportunity to breed that self-sufficiency. So the botanical gardens is certainly a priority. The initial planning work has already gone into it. The concept trust, as suggested by central government, has also been developed. Yes, Madam Prime Minister, a charitable trust which would facilitate, in our hope, a certain degree of private sector and individual investment into it, where again we are not looking to central government for the funding.
Thank you. The truth is that I received only this week the draft master plan for the gardens, and we look forward to being able to execute it, and to also have Barbadians who we expect to be returning home for 2020 to also have their square meter or their tree or their area as part of that national exercise, because we will do it with many hands making light work. Madam Chair, if you will allow me, I'd like to have a supplemental question, please.
I think I'll allow you. Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to address the next question, Minister, to your officers related to the whole question of the volume of waste. This government has had to deal with and previous governments, the very difficult and vexatious question of the disposal of waste in this country. We have yet to have in place an appropriate framework for waste to energy in spite of the Cahill disaster and debacle. Do you yet have the numbers that would allow us to see how we can, through a diversion of waste to the sugar factory, first and foremost, to ensure that any factory which is used for the manufacture of sugar can be powered on a 12-month basis by reason of the feedstock from our waste stream, such that that sugar factory, through a power purchase agreement, can become financially viable, or, for argument's sake, the cement factory, which needs a cheaper source of fuel than it currently has, and therefore may be able to look at waste as being able to drive that cheaper source of fuel, or even after you satisfy the two of them and recycling, would there still be a need for other waste-to-energy facilities in this country, or would that be exhaustive? Or how soon are we in a position to advise government's economic strategy on these issues, please?
I will ask Mr. Marshall to respond to the Prime Minister on this question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. With respect to the issue raised, we have drafted terms of reference, and we have been pursuing avenues for funding of the feasibility study through routes that would not cost government directly for that. The draft terms of reference is actually with the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources right now for their final comment. What we're doing in that is looking at the options, as the Prime Minister would have spoken about. There are three separate issues here. One, whether or not you're going to look at waste energy, looking directly at what we consider to be municipal solid waste, whether or not you're going to have a waste-to-energy component that is fired primarily by agricultural biomass waste with supplementary waste provided by the general garbage stream, or if you're going to look at an opportunity, say for use of a cement plant and associated kiln, and retrofit that and include the options of utilizing that stream to provide an opportunity to treat other components of the waste. There are positives and negatives to all of those. It is estimated that we should have the feasibility study completed within 4 to 6 months of it being done. We're looking to try and shorten it as best as we can, but it would be appreciated that we have to understand the costs, both in terms of the financial costs as well as the environmental costs, as well as what the benefits are and what models they are that can be pursued to achieve what it is we want to achieve. So we're trying to ensure that we're covering the bases of what is required from the agricultural perspective, what is required from the perspective of treatment of waste, including hazardous substances, as well as the issue of generation of power in a way that makes sense and reduces our dependence on fossil fuels and taking a greener approach to energy generation.
Thank you. I see Dr. Seeley behind you as if he wants to supplement, you know. The last final question, ma'am, relates to another constituency matter for the member of St. George North and to a lesser extent myself, because of the extent to which it affects my constituents, and that relates to Lower Estate and the continued nuisance which it poses and continues to pose to residents of Lower Estate, Huddersfield Turning, etc. I'm aware that there is no dumping taking place on that site anymore. But can the officers and perhaps Mr. Headley, through you, Minister, explain what will be the issue with respect to the continued smells and why residents would still be facing and encountering that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Prime Minister, the issue is that residual material remains within the quarry, and as such, there is internal combustion that is occurring, indicating that the initial fire that occurred quite some time ago is still smothering and releasing toxic smoke, which is impacting on the residents of the area. Part of the concern for us as well with respect to that particular quarry is the location relative to our Bell drinking water supply well. And I am certainly aware that the Ministry of Health was working assiduously on this matter through the Environmental Health Department, and certainly we can partner with them to ensure that the continuing nuisance can be abated. But the Ministry of Health was the one who served the initial notices. We did the monitoring of the impacts of the smoke on the residents within the area.
Honourable Member for St. George North.
Thank you for recognizing me, Madam Chair.
You're quite welcome.
I think the Prime Minister has asked the question that I wanted to zero in, and the question is still that the residents are suffering in that area. But I want to ask the Minister and his team if they understand that the environment has been literally what Barbados is all about. Sea, sun, good roads, good green fields, manicured lawns, and so on. Barbados has a history of being a clean country. I know that the minister is new, and I'm not here to praise you as the member for Christchurch South Side. I'm not here to bury you either, but I know that you have inherited a number of persons who were at this ministry for a long, long time. And I know that you're going to put some new trucks and new things at this ministry. And I hope it's not akin to putting new wine in old bottles. But I want to ask the question, what methods are you using to modernize the sanitation department and the environmental department to ensure that we get satisfaction in the future I'm not sure if your department is driven by technology, but it seems to me that you only respond, this department only respond when people call you. For example, at the Glebe St. George garbage, if I call the sanitation department, they respond. All across the country, and in Barbados, and I want to find out if your department is driven by technology or is just driven by if somebody called the department and what will happen in the future. The other question is, and the vexing question is, I believe that your department is spending a lot of money on wages over time. What methods are being used to modernize this department to have a 24-hour service like other developing countries? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Obviously, any modern entity, private or state entity, we have to fall in line with the more modern paradigms. We cannot escape a modern environment where science and technology is impacting upon all the changes that we witness. But you are also fully aware of the challenges, and which I hate to keep repeating this all the time, because I believe that this should be obvious to every man and woman, especially that live in this land. We inherit a number of encumbrances as a government, and the demand on the direct demand on the SSA is unavoidable. The public will have to undertake the responsibility sometimes to call, because even when we put a comprehensive schedule in place, the reality is that having 12 trucks on the road, we can work all the theories out. They're going to have demands that we cannot meet on a daily basis, and sometimes we have to be rescheduling, rerouting the entire the trucks on the streets. And that is one of the reasons why the debate even went as far as having overtime and having to deal with issues, removal of garbage or rather waste on Saturdays and Sundays, because we just don't have the amount of vehicles. Now, when it comes to modernizing the equipment and being able to respond with a high level of technology, we have to do that in the future. Because if we are going to be talking about the separation of waste at source, and we are going to be imposing legislation that will indicate that each household must have certainly not one bin, it means that each household should have at least no less than 2 bins in front of their residence, so that we can begin to separate the garbage at source. But then we cannot send a truck to collect that garbage with one container or cylinder to the back of it, and then you have to put 3 or so separate types of waste into the same place. So you obviously understand there is a demand for the technology at the level there, but then we also have we also have to look at the separation of garbage after being collected and going to either to the landfill or to the recycling units as well. So there's some level of technology occurring at the level of the recycling plants. But one of the challenges that we have is the separation of the garbage at source. Now, the reality is that there's a whole set of legislation that would have to be put in place in order that would allow us to actually enforce the law to make sure that people adhere to the requirements. Because you can appreciate, and I think that is what was said before, that there was a deculturization. Barbadians understood their role, the marriage between man and nature, and understood that they had a responsibility to clean up the facilities. But if you live in a country where there's maladministration, and where people live in despair, and where people reach a level where some level of indifference would occur. And if we also have a shortage of what is required to allow people to operate within the decency of making sure that they do what is right to keep the environment clean, then you obviously have a breakdown of the services in general. So we have now a responsibility after that deculturalization process to do whatever we can in order to bring back that level of consciousness and responsibility that would marry man again to nature and at least be able to provide the kind of service that is required for the people of Barbados.
You had also asked about wages?
Yeah, well, I want to find out what is the SSA doing to get this country into the habit of having a 24-hour system rather than having overtime, which to my mind has been there for a long time and has caused tremendous burden on taxpayers of this country.
That matter is at present. That discussion, according to all the information I've received from the chairman of the sanitation service and other sources, that matter is being, at present, the union and the SSA administration is in the process of discussions in order to resolve those matters. And I believe that we are allowing that kind of democratic approach to continue. And I wish I could probably impose your value judgment on it and do what I think you would like to do, but I handle the issues in a different way altogether.
With respect, I want to ask the Minister a follow-up question, because I have been in this Parliament for over 24 years, and every Minister of Sanitation and every chairman has made the point that they're working with the unions. They're working with the unions. We need to understand that if we want to put Barbados into the 21st century and, of course, to modernize our developed country, that we cannot have sanitation, the hospital, the fire service, the police working on overtime. The police, the nurses, the doctors do not work overtime. Why is it that sanitation believe that they must continue to work overtime? I want to hear the chairman.
Madam Chair.
On this matter.
Sir.
I am a social democrat, and I believe that this party has contributed in a meaningful way to the emergence of the trade union movement. The trade union movement is at present having, in fact today, the trade union movement is having discussions with the sanitation department. When those conclusions have been reached, I am prepared to announce the outcome of civil and democratic discussions. I am not going to allow any individual person, because they have a notion that this is the way how business should be done, to impose or drive fear in me in order to make the changes without the process of democracy continuing.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Ma'am. The Honourable Prime Minister preempted almost precisely a question I had on the botanical gardens. But I would want to ask in a wider frame, with respect to these estimates, where is it indicative that there is a program for the development of gullies as a potential part of our tourism product offering? And while you're at that, could you tell us the position on the fountain at the Queen's Park, or whether it is functional or whatsoever?
Again, we toured the Queen's Park area recently, and I had, along with me, Mr. Neblett, we went to the Queen's Park and we saw the fountain, there is a very glaring crack in the actual base of the fountain itself, and I have asked him to have discussions with the chairman and the board on how we will go forward in the future, and I will let the chairman also speak on that. But I also want to assure you that I have a special interest in the Gully project. And as I told you, I will further discuss these matters with the Prime Minister and so on, so that I will extend, and the Prime Minister has already indicated that there will be a relationship between the two constituencies, which is separated by Waterfords, and you will already see the process of beautification. My concept and the interpretation of what I see on the document of what is the interpretation of natural beauty coming out of what we're doing in houses and turn. When we finish with that bottom, you will be able to reflect on what was there before and what is there now and what will continue to be there in the future, and that will be extended into the gully. And I want to further have discussions in relation to the historic nature of the Waterfords pumping station. I want to have further discussions on, there's a bridge crossing from Waterfords pumping station into in my constituency, into the back of Liquid Village and Bell Gully. We want to have that as part of the development, and I'm also going to ensure that we preserve the Bell plantation house, and if we can incorporate it into the entire paradigm, I can assure you that we will bring out all the historic qualities that exist within that entire geographical space that we just mentioned.
Through you, I'm sure the honorable minister is aware that there are other gullies in Barbados apart from the Bell Gully. And my question was really what is indicative in the estimates of a plan to develop our gullies as part of our tourism product offering. But since he makes reference to the Waterford and Bel Air, an area which I know very well, traversed very much as a child, as a boy, played in those spaces, there's also what is referred to as the prison gully. And there's an old building used to house inmates there in Barbados, which right now is not substantially used. I wonder if in terms of development of the botanical gardens, there is any consideration for making the old prison facility, unless there is a better use plan for that, making that facility into part of the botanical gardens, perhaps an entertainment center or some stuff like that. Or museum.
But the Natural Heritage Department, that is the unit within the ministry that focuses a lot of attention on historical sites, obviously on the agenda would be the prison, but we don't do these things alone, or we might not even be the main ministry that will deal with these issues. But matters related to the Gully project, the botanical gardens, the prison, the new import in the form of helping to preserve the house, which is in the Bell, that was the former residence of the Lascelles and the royal family. All of that is part of our history. And I want you also to know that I have to give some priority to St. Michael's East, you know. St. Michael's East has been special to me, and is responsible for me being in here on 4 occasions, 4 multiplied by 5 will give you 20 years. And I have to start somewhere. The Prime Minister indicated that I am a bit generous sometimes and don't like to ask for things within the constituency. But on this occasion, I will start the Gully project in the Bell, and I will reach out to all the other areas across Barbados. But the Bell would be the pioneer. I will set the example for what the transformation will look like. So I hope that gives you some comfort, sir.
We share common interest in St. Michael East. I'm a constituent in St. Michael East. I voted for the honorable member 4 times. I'm growing kind. I am growing kind of tired of that routine.
We have about 10 minutes left. I'll try to fit in everyone. Honorable member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My question is directly related to the estimates. I see here, and of course I'm only a little bit alarmed because there's a significant reduction, and I'm hoping it doesn't manifest in lack of work in Bayland, Paddock Road, Charleston, you know. But I see here in the general management, and maybe it's better for your PS to try to answer, in the sub-program 7095, your operating expenses go from $2,803,000 to $361,000. That is a reduction of $2.5 million. And to the unknowing, which is me in this case, one would wonder how you would be able to facilitate and continue your mandate with such a significant reduction. And then related to that, Madam Chair, is the same question. There is also in for policy, I see an increase in your policy section by almost twice as much for your operating expenses. And I'm asking that question because I do not yet have a policy section in the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, but I'm hoping I could piggyback on some of your work. So those 2 questions, Madam Chair, please.
Madam Chair, I'm asking my financial controller to come forward, but I could give you the assurance there will be a major reduction in wastage. We have had some changes where departments that existed within the ministry before is no longer in the ministry. And I can also assure you that there will be a high level of efficiency. So we will probably do more with what little we have than the persons who had to deal with that kind of finance before. But just let me bring the FC forward because she'll be able to confirm if the figures that we're hearing are the right figures or not.
Okay. Actually, one. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the...
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Travis Sinkler, the Senior Environmental Officer and Head of the Policy Research, Planning and Information Unit. I respond to the question regarding the increases in the operating expenses for the Policy Unit. That is sub-program 049. The Minister of the Environment and National Beautification has a responsibility as of October 2018 to 2020 as the new forum of the Ministers of the Environment for Latin America and the Caribbean. That responsibility means that the minister must lead the regional environmental governance processes for the Caribbean, for Latin American countries. It will also mean that he has to represent this region to global environmental governance processes. It will also include hosting the next Forum of Ministers of the Environment in 2019, and in fact in 2020 as well. So the increases speak first and foremost to the hosting of that meeting in Barbados. We also have responsibility as well for a new program of action on the green economy. And that program will be speaking to the green and the blue economy, working collaboratively with the Minister for Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy. And it would involve, Madam Chair, actually convening not just meetings here, but also we're putting new programs in place in schools. We're working collaboratively as well with the Ministry of Agriculture as well. And so there'll be a number of training programs that we are now going to be embedding in Barbados with the assistance of the United Nations, and that is the in-kind support to that broader program of action on green economy. The increases that you see there will enable both of those initiatives. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm very glad to hear you say it would include the Ministry of Maritime Affairs. That's a public commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Member.
I think think she has an answer.
Honorable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
No, Madam Chair, my first question, the one relating to the 2.5 dip, wasn't answered at all.
So somebody's coming forward.
That the question of the 2.5 million was not answered. Okay, let me make it clear. The 2.5 million has already been transferred in advance of these estimates. The 2.5 million is in the NCC's accounts. The NCC coming out of the financial year 2018 to 2019. So we are holding it in the NCC accounts because we do not have to return the 2.5 for the new financial year. But the finance is already there in NCC. So there was no need to put it back into the new estimates to put that amount up to over $5 million. So it remains with us. We have it in our possession. And I just want to assure the minister they would not have a negative impact on anything that we will work together on in order to address the issues.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to the Minister and his team. My question relates to sub-program 400, Environmental Health Services. One of the issues that continue to exist within St. Michael Northwest is the fact that we have a lot of abandoned vehicles and also abandoned properties. So I just would like to know what your ministry will be doing since you announced the National Cleanup Program last Tuesday. I just want to know what your ministry will be doing about these things, these issues.
You want to answer the question first? Okay, for more a more detailed technical explanation, I have to refer to Mr. Eddy, but what I want to show you is that program also will be off the ground by next week. We had to adhere to a number of prerequisites because we want to operate within the law, so we had to give adequate notice to the persons who own the derelict vehicles and derelict homes. We have already done that, so we're ready to execute the program by next week. Over 400 to 500 vehicles will be removed from the landscape. This was a challenge that we have had, that for over 10 to 12 years this problem existed. There were many derelict vehicles across Barbados and has contributed a lot to the increase in the rat population. But Mr. Headley, who is responsible for that program, can give you the assurance of what we're going to do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The particular program, as indicated, has not been in operation since 2012. We have been putting in place the necessary administrative mechanisms to ensure that when we start, we can continue. We have, to date, carried out the identification processes, and we've served the various notices as required by law. And for those notices that have been expired, we're in the process of preparing the contracts for the various contractors who will be executing the work. I'm expecting to have the administrative paperwork within the ministry by next week. As the minister indicated, it's our intention to have that work commenced as quickly as possible. There were some challenges, or there are some challenges associated with both programs, considering some of the things that are happening within our society. I've had a meeting with the contractors as well as my staff who has been going around marking and serving the various notices. And one of the issues of concern for us is the issue of safety. It's been brought to my attention that some of those derelict vehicles have been used in a nefarious manner in terms of storage of illegal items. And some of my staff within recent times have undergone threats. And we have been very careful with respect to some of the areas in which we have been traversing. And one of the mechanisms that certainly we will be putting in place now that we are at the stage where we can issue the contracts is to request the assistance of the Barbados Police Force to ensure not only the safety of my staff, but also the safety of the contractors as they try to execute some of the works for those vehicles that we have identified that there are some challenges. So we've been putting the performance standards in place for the contractors as well, and by today we should finish the inspections of the contractors to ensure that they have all of the necessary equipment to carry out the work before those contracts are signed next week.
Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you.
I want to thank you first by saying that I'm going to give you a really hard task to wrap up in 2 minutes.
I'll do that.
2 minutes.
I'll do that, Madam Chair. Thanks for allowing me to deliver this presentation at the 11th hour of concluding the sittings. But I am extremely proud to be part of this configuration which was introduced by this government, and I am proud also to have the opportunity to be the first Minister of the Environment to be able to come here and at least give you an elastic understanding of the various arms of the ministry and the various functions of the ministry. I believe that there was a public perception that the role of the ministry only relates to issues related to waste, but we are here for the general protection of Mother Earth. And we are here to ensure that those synergies between man and Mother Earth remain in harmony, and to do all that we can to ensure that all of the challenges that came along with industrialization and post-industrialization, that we would provide the kind of competent staff and the kind of government that be able to put in place all forces of resilience and all forces of mitigation that will enable us to live a very comfortable life with some level of hope. So I want to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak today and on Tuesday as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please move that the headstand part. Honourable Minister, please move that the headstand part.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the headstand part.
Question is that head 82 in the amount of 35,716,875 stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. wanted to say something about dental health. The dentists complaining that we don't get much They call me and they say, "Stop me." I can call you. You know you're calling.
Head 86, Ministry of Health and Wellness, in the amount of $227,529,290.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I have your permission, ma'am, to have the remainder of the team from the Ministry of Health and Wellness to join me?
Permission granted.
Thank you.
Oh, we get early. We invite the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness to make his introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me introduce the members of the team that are with me at the table. To my right is Permanent Secretary, Ms. Joan Chanda. To my left is the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kenneth George. And to the right of the Permanent Secretary is the Chief Health Planner, Mr. Danny Gill. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be here for the first time as the Minister of Health and Wellness to participate in the Estimates Debates 2019. Let me begin by saying that the Ministry of Health and Wellness is committed to providing high-quality health care to everyone on this island, in every part of the island, and at any time. And we do so with the funds that have been allocated to the ministry and being cognizant of the fact that prior to these estimates, the ministry would have been front-loaded with the contributions coming from the health services contribution that was introduced by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Prime Minister, which more or less guarantees the Queen Elizabeth Hospital with a monthly income of about $4 million. In addition to that, we would have been front-loaded with $14 million in order to execute mission essential projects at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Accident and Emergency and the 224-hour polyclinic services. The funds allocated to the Ministry of Health and Wellness obviously have to be spent in delivering the high-quality healthcare service that I just alluded to. There are 8 programs in this budget with a number of sub-programs. Some of the programs include the provision of primary healthcare services, hospital services, the pharmaceutical program, HIV/AIDS, environmental health, care of the elderly, care of the disabled. And these programs are executed in a number of institutions throughout the length and breadth of this country, including 6 hospitals, Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Psychiatric Hospital, 4 district hospitals, the St. Michael District Hospital, known as the Geriatric Hospital, and the other district hospitals in St. Lucy's, St. Thomas, which is Gordon Cummins, and St. Philip. Additionally, there are 9 polyclinics, starting with Morris Bay in the north. In the south is Randall Phillips and the St. Philip Polyclinic. And in the east, we have the St. John Polyclinic, and taking care of the west is the Eunice Gibson Polyclinic. St. Michael obviously has the remainder of the polyclinics, being the parish with approximately 1/3 of the total population of this country. Additionally, we have 2 outpatient clinics in operation, one in St. Thomas and the other in St. Joseph. We also have a lab, the Best Dos Santos lab, the Lady Mead Reference Unit, and a number of other institutions that form part of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We have identified a number of challenges within the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and there are about 4 strategic goals that we intend to pursue in order to overcome these challenges. But if I could put it simply, for this fiscal year, this ministry intends to enhance, to restore and to enhance the operational effectiveness and efficiency of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, which would facilitate the delivery of high-quality healthcare services in this island. And it is something that we intend to do, to pursue vigorously, because this ministry, under my leadership, must be a solutions-oriented ministry operating within the framework of a decision-making government. And we intend in this ministry, in spite of the limitations that we may have with resources, because the country obviously is going through an economic restructuring program, but we will tackle all of the challenges one by one until we bring resolution to these challenges and to these problems. Those areas that we are not able to fix within this financial year, we will certainly make every effort to make life better for the people of this country. And with those opening remarks, Madam Chair, we are ready to face whatever questions that may come at us today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I must say, for no offense, PM, but for the first time, it feels like home here with so many doctors. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me begin by offering compliments to my honorable friend from the city of Bridgetown on his appointment to the leadership of this ministry. Certainly very, very important ministry in the total scheme of things when we talk about the development of our country. often we focus on economics and we forget the very important matter of all those elements which are so necessary to be properly attended if our economic development is to be realized to the degree that we aspire. I look forward, therefore, during the interaction with the Honorable Minister and his team, whom we welcome here today, that I will be hearing out of these estimates some insights as to how the minister and his team plan to manage the tensions which obviously exists around the Ministry of Health in Barbados and health-related matters in Barbados. There's the tension of a declining health budget in the context of an aging population, declining health budget in the context of increasing incidence of NCDs, declining health budget in the context of violent incidents, some accidental, some criminal, an aging plant as well, which is not particularly suited to the technological advances being made in medicine in the world today, and associated with the practice of modern medicine. So I look forward to see how all of these estimates and from the responses of the team here present with us, how we plan to manage our responses to those situations. I look forward also, ma'am, to hearing something on the issue of generic drugs. I am not like yourself, a medical professional, and we are today graced with the presence of many who perhaps can speak intelligently and in an informed way on this matter. What you hear, I am sure the honorable member for St. Peter will agree with me, what you hear on the middle of Swall Street or at the top of Broad Street is that the use of generic drugs in Barbados is causing a problem for several people. Honestly, ma'am, just this week, last week, I met a gentleman whom I previously did not know shopping in his supermarket, and he raised that issue with me, and he asked me first chance I got to raise it at this level, because he had been put on a regime of some generic drugs which caused some medical complications for himself. And we need to know what is the true and full story with reference to the use of generic drugs in Barbados. Is a question financial constraints, lack of access to brand name drugs because of the cost and price associated with these things, or are there other problems which drive us towards the use of generics? And what measure of, or what mechanisms of quality control are there in place with respect to this matter? Where are we sourcing our generics? I was privately discussing this with someone, and he was suggesting to me that some places these drugs are placed in the context of tiers, and that we are drawing drugs from tier 3 or tier 4 rather than tier 1 or tier 2. Now, I look forward to being informed properly on those matters and getting an idea of where we are here in this country with respect to the use of the drugs, the reasons for the use of the drugs, the possible challenges and complications they are causing, and the mechanisms for quality control which are in place with respect to that. The other matter I would perhaps want to raise and hear addressed during the interaction with the minister and his team has to do with the rising incidence of NCDs in Barbados. A former Barbados Labour Party administration, in response to the growing HIV threat of the day, that response was made by practically owning the program of response and seeking grant funding to ensure that there was a robust response made to that rising threat. It seems to me that if I am properly informed, the level of NCDs now existing in Barbados is such that we are at crisis point. And perhaps that type of response is now merited where the government clearly and obviously owns the program and finds extra funding towards assisting in facilitating that response. And the last thing I want to, we've now got the Ross presence in Barbados, the Ross University Medical School presence in Barbados. I am hoping to hear during the course of these discussions perhaps reference to the levels of complementarity which might exist between the health services or the health-related architecture in Barbados and the Ross presence. And if it is perceived that there will be some level of complementarity or cooperation, what protocols are there in place that will govern these matters? Thank you, ma'am.
Before you begin, Minister, please move the head. Please move the head.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 86 stand part.
Thank you. Go ahead. You may answer. I don't.
Those are his opening remarks. Yeah.
Well, I heard a few questions, so I was just wondering if we could get over them. Go ahead.
I figured there were opening remarks, but certainly they can answer some of the questions given the time that I have available to me. And the one that I would want to start with is the whole question of NCDs, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition wanted to know what it is that the government was doing. Let me state first of all that the mere fact that this government made a decision to redesignate the Ministry of Health to that of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, I think was a clear indicator as to the direction that we plan to go in terms of dealing with the rising incidence of NCDs. As a result of that, wellness is now a major part of this ministry. We are still working on the strategy and so on going forward, but some of the initiatives that have been undertaken, for example, is the ministerial subcommittee which has been established to deal with NCDs. And this ministerial subcommittee, which is due to meet in a few weeks' time, this includes several ministries: education, agriculture, youth affairs, elderly affairs, and a number of other ministries. And when we get that subcommittee going, that subcommittee will plan a response across all sectors, and including all dimensions of wellness, that we would be able then to bring to the nation and to solicit the support of the business community and NGOs. Well, in terms of the NGOs, I would say the continued support, because they have been at the forefront of this effort. But we want a collaborative approach which would involve communities, involve families. And as a result of that also, we've established a national task force on wellness. And these initiatives, which are already on the way, these initiatives are intended to deal with the whole issue of NCDs in Barbados. And this ministry really is almost ready, I would say, to execute our wellness strategy. And you will be hearing more about that as time goes on. The other one that I would like to deal with is in terms of managing tensions. And you did hit a few there. But as I said in the beginning, yes, we have an aging plant. We have challenges. But this ministry intends, like the government of Barbados, to be innovative in the way that we respond to these challenges. And if I may use the geriatric hospital as an example, the St. Michael District Hospital, the plant there has been in a state of disrepair for many years. And one would have assumed that nothing could be done because we didn't have the finances to do what was required. But thinking out of the box, we were able to forge a partnership between the Barbados Defense Force and the Ministry of Health and Wellness, along with private sector support, because we had a lot of donations of materials. And together we were able to refurbish 2 wards at the geriatric hospital, and that project is continuing. And it is the intention of the Ministry of Health and Wellness to take this further into the next financial year, to include doing some remedial work at the polyclinics and certainly the remainder of the district hospitals, because they do need some urgent repairs. I will ask, if I may, Madam President, for the Chief Medical Officer to deal with the issue of the generics.
Madam Chairperson, it's an honor to be in this great chamber with respect to generics versus branded drugs. The Barbados Drug Service is one of the most comprehensive, has one of the most comprehensive formularies in terms of selection of drugs within the Eastern Caribbean. We believe that the Barbadian public deserves quality health care through the provision of quality pharmaceuticals, and that needs to be stated up front. Countries across the globe have been, however, investing more in generic drugs vis-a-vis branded drugs. And these are not only countries that are underdeveloped, these are countries certainly that have a lot of financial ability to purchase branded drugs. What we need to be doing as a ministry is to ensure that we have a complement of both generics and branded drugs on our formulary. The Barbadian public must know that where there are generic drugs, the Barbados Drug Service takes every effort to make sure that those drugs are of quality. And we have a monitoring system. There is a department within the Barbados Drug Service, the Department of Pharmacovigilance. We work with our partners within the region, which is particularly CARFA, to make sure that the generic drugs that are bought into the Barbadian market are at a particular quality. Where there have been reports that generic drugs have failed, whether that be from local sources or international sources, the Barbados Drug Service, working with the Ministry of Health, has had those drugs removed off of the market and the appropriate generic drugs replaced. So the Ministry of Health will continue to have quality drugs. The Barbadian public needs to know that. We have put several safety checks with respect to understanding the way how we monitor quality of drugs. And we will continue, when there are credible reports, to have those drugs replaced by branded drugs. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll also ask the Director of the Barbados Drug Service to be able to speak to this issue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say that with the drug service being the government's pharmaceutical program, there's certain safety and quality assurance measures that have been built into the legislation. For example, to be an approved supplier to the government of Barbados, you have to go through a test that we will have to put you through rigorous tests. We have to test the quality of your product. When the product is submitted, you have to submit to us a certificate of analysis to show that you've produced the product, you've done all the analysis to ensure that the product is what it is. Let me pause to say that there are good and there are bad generics. We are aware of that, and we spend a lot of time, especially to monitor the generic products that come new on our market. Our intention is to make sure that every new generic is tested. And also, we just don't do the testing willy-nilly. The laboratories that we use have to be approved and, to ensure that they conform to the World Health Organization strict manufacturing guidance. Also, as the Chief Medical Officer would have indicated, we have regional mechanisms through the Caribbean Public Health Agency called the Caribbean Regulatory System, where we are now monitoring generic drugs. We first of all make sure that the drugs have been tested by stringent regulatory authorities, and also that WHO have pre-qualified them. Most of the labs that we use for the testing right now is our Canadian labs. And through the Indian Embassy, we have been able to make contact because through Madam Chair, to say that most of the drugs that come, the generic products that come to Barbados are from India. But we do have some that are from Europe. We have some that are from